Welcome back to Cinemania Recapped. In the opening scene of the movie, we see a possessed man named Ronnie holding a gun in his hand. He shoots down each members of his family one by one. Afterwards, he finds his little sister named Jody sitting hidden in the closet. The little girl asks Ronnie what the matter is. He shoots her, saying he loves her very much. After this, the scene cuts. We hear a piece of news informing that 6 members of the same family have been shot dead in their beds. Out of all the family members, Ronnie is left alive, and he is accused of murdering his family. Ronnie told the police that he heard haunting voices in his house asking him to kill all his family members. 1 year later, on Deer Park, Long Island, we see Kathy awakening her husband named George. There comes Michael, the youngest son of Kathy. Actually, George is not the real father of Michael, but stepfather. He asks George if he ever met his father, on which George replies that he never got any chance to meet his real father. He tells Michael that he can call him whatever he likes. Kathy has 2 more children, eldest son named Billy and youngest daughter named Chelsea. Out of them, Billy does not like George. Now George and Kathy go to purchase a new house, seeing an advertisement in the newspaper. They arrive at the targeted house where a realtor welcomes them. Kathy is pretty much excited on seeing the house. The realtor notifies them that the house is very beautiful from inside and they can't turn a blind eye to it. Saying this, she takes both of them inside the house. George asks the lady realtor why the house is being sold at such cheap price, as it is commodious and good looking from inside. Right then, a black shadow passes from behind, which the realtor sees but remains silent as if nothing happened. She shows them the basement of the house but doesn't go herself. Here George sees a recorder which was showing 15 past 3. Considering it worthless, he throws it away and go upstairs. Up there, George suggests to Kathy that they can't afford the house, and if they did so, they would go broke. But Kathy is adamant about buying this house at any cost. Hence, George also agrees, which makes Kathy over the moon. George again inquires the lady realtor about the house. Therefore, she informs them that long time ago, there lived a DeFeo's family here. Ronnie, the eldest son, killed all of his family members when they were asleep in their beds. On this, George says, "Houses don't kill people, rather. People kill people." Now Kathy seems to be unwilling to purchase this house, but this time George wants to make this house theirs. Now it's day 1, and the whole Lutz family arrives at the new house taking their belongings. At first, they record a memorable video to capture the beautiful moments. At night, Kathy asks Billy to give a chance to George because he will not be disloyal to his departed father by doing so. George is also overhearing all this. Kathy tells Billy that no one can replace his father. Saying this, she leaves. George feels shivering cold in this house. He moves down in the basement where he puts wood chunks into the fireplace. Just then, he hears voices around him. He checks everything carefully to locate the voices, but later ignores it and moves away. While intimating with Kathy, George sees a creepy little girl behind Kathy hanging down from a rope. George gets scared and says he is not feeling well. Kathy finds Chelsea talking to an invisible entity in her room. Chelsea tells her mother that she was talking to Jody, who lives in her closet. Kathy takes everything Chelsea says for granted. Just then, Jody signals her to keep quiet. When Kathy turns around, she can't see anyone in the room. Outside, Michael brings a torture device and hands it to George, saying he found it in the basement. George orders aggressively Michael not to go to the basement again, as it is his office. George is changing day by day after arriving here. Chelsea is seen nowhere in the house, hence the duo goes to look for her and rushes towards the boathouse, inside which they find Chelsea in the hypnotized state. She tells her mother that Jody wanted to see the boat. Kathy picks her up and goes away, saying someone should have looked after her, meaning she was indirectly blaming George. At night, Michael had to pee, so he tries to wake up Billy, but he doesn't get up. That's when Michael hears some haunting voices coming from a window above. He goes to pee himself. After making water, he turns off the tap. A demonic entity is also nearby him at this moment. Michael makes away from the washroom like a lunatic and hides himself under the sheet in his room. All the windows open automatically, and chairs move from their places. George also gets up and goes to check on his family in its room, where he finds himself shooting his own family. Just then, George gets up, meaning he was having a nightmare. Again, it is 3:15 of night. George nears the window and discovers the boathouse unlocked, and a balloon is coming out of it. He thinks Chelsea is there, therefore he rushes towards the boathouse. On reaching inside, he finds no one there. He sees some bubbles coming up, so he dives into the water, thinking Chelsea is under the water. He looks for her and finds none there. He gets out of the water empty-handed. Outside, he hears his dog barking at someone. George also sees a little girl standing up at the window. Without any delay, he goes upstairs and finds Chelsea sleeping in her bed peacefully. Just then, an evil entity is seen on the ceiling holding Jody in its hands forcefully. George could not see this terrifying scene. He brings a teddy from the haunted room of Jody and places it under her pillow. Down in the basement, George's dog smells something strange behind the locked door, but George ignores it and drives the dog away. In the kitchen, Kathy feels someone passing very fast behind her. She discovers magnets indicating her catch them and kill them. She interrogates George if he did that, but by then, everything had become normal. To refreshen their minds, both George and Kathy think of going out today, but before that, Kathy has hired a babysitter named Lisa. Seeing the physical beauty of Lisa, Billy is quite shocked to speak anything. Kathy asks Lisa if she needs to show the house to her. Lisa informs Kathy that she is well acquainted with every nook and corner of the house. Hearing this, Kathy is much surprised. Lisa tells her that she has worked for the DeFeo's family. The DeFeos is the very family whose members had been shot dead in this very house. Scene shifts. George and Kathy are at a restaurant, enjoying every moment. At the mansion, Billy brings popcorns for Lisa, as he is into her. Lisa asks Billy if his family knew the DeFeos, the family that once lived there before him. Billy replies that they have just moved in this house. Then Lisa says, "Do you know what happened to them?" Billy says no. She tells him that there lived a wacky man named Ronnie here. People of this town say that Ronnie used to hear evil voices asking him to kill everyone in the family. Few days later, he begins to see his family members as demon. Therefore, he killed each and every one of them. He went room to room, splattering their heads when they were asleep. Now Lisa takes Billy and Michael to Jody's room, who is no more in this world. Right then, Chelsea shows up and says Jody is saying that you are not a good babysitter. Then Lisa says, "Jody is dead, and she got me fired." She gets up and goes into Jody's room. Just then the door shuts violently on its own. Lisa asks Billy to open the door, but it was not opening. That's when Jody's spirit shows up and shows Lisa her bullet mark, saying, "Look what Ronnie has done to me." After a little while, a medical team reaches there, and Lisa tells Kathy that she has seen Jody, but she is supposed to be dead. Inside, George blames the trio for all this, as he thinks that Billy, along with his siblings, did all this to Lisa. Billy says, "Why did you not tell us about the people who got killed here? The babysitter told me that 2 little boys died in our room." Kathy approaches Chelsea, who informs her that Lisa was being cruel to Jody. Therefore, she hurt her. Chelsea further says, "We don't need to get scared, as Jody will not hurt us." In the basement while working, George hears horrible voices asking him to catch them and kill them. George notices that the haunting voices are coming from the other side of the door. As soon as he enters the eerie door, he finds a man lying on the platform. He grabs his hair and sees it is no other than him, meaning he was having a dreadful vision. Following this, he takes a bath in bathtub. Just then someone tries to drown him. George flutters for life. In the nick of time, Kathy arrives there and gets him out. George's condition is worsening day by day. One day, Chelsea is standing on top of her house, which scares both George and Kathy. She dashes to save her. Chelsea tells her that she has to go with Jody. Saying this, Chelsea jumps off, but Kathy grabs her by her dress and asks George to come quickly. George catches Chelsea before she gives up the ghost. Chelsea tells Kathy that Jody is real and she has seen her. Here, Chelsea reveals to Kathy that Jody is about to make her meet her father. Hereafter, Kathy visits Father Calloway to find out the history of her house. She says to him, "They have changed a lot since their arrival in the new house. There is something evil in my house." Then Father Calloway reveals to her that there lived a DeFeo's family here some time ago. They also had a similar problem. Here, George is also becoming violent day by day and makes Billy work forcefully. He orders Billy to hold the log firmly as he is about to cleave it. In the basement, he watches his memorable video when everyone used to be happy. Seeing the sweet memories, George becomes happy. Just then, he sees Billy as demon. Now it's 3:15 of night, and someone orders George to catch them and kill them alive. George sees that the main door is still open so late at night. He picks up the axe and heads towards the boathouse. He goes inside and brutally kills his dog, considering it a demon, meaning George is completely possessed. Kathy comes into the room and tells George that there is something wrong in their house. We must get out of here at the earliest, but George does not want to leave the house and says, "We cannot run away from our problems until we fix them." Kathy seems to be desperate to move out of this haunted house. Billy comes and interrogates George if he has seen his dog. George responds, "No." Father Calloway visits Kathy's house as she had requested him to call upon her. Here, Father sees a doll in Chelsea's hands. Therefore, he takes Kathy out and tells her that the doll that Chelsea has in her hands belonged to the little girl named Jody, who lived here before your arrival. Father says, "I knew DeFeos very well and I presided over their funeral." Jody DeFeo was buried along with her doll, which is now in Chelsea's hands. Hearing this, Kathy goes numb. Father Calloway comes to Kathy's house to sanctify it. He throws holy water here and there, and while sprinkling it, he also hears dreadful voices coming through a window above. He looks through the window to find but a swarm of flies attacks him, driving him far away from the perimeter of the house. Kathy rushes to stop him, but he doesn't. George shows up from behind, having red, intoxicated eyes. During the night, while sleeping in the basement, those creepy voices haunt George again. That's when the projector turns on automatically. Outside, George sees that the door of the boathouse is open, which makes him restless from inside. He falls down and sobs. Kathy is watching all this standing near the window. Scene shifts, and it's 28th day since moving in this haunted house. Kathy discovers the cursed history of her house through news articles, and she comes to know that her house is haunted. Ronnie, the eldest son of the DeFeos family, saw his family members as demons, prompting him to kill all of them after 28 days. In the house, George begins to break down the door from which haunting voices have been coming since their arrival. At first, he is welcomed by the maggots crawling on the rotten door. In the library, Kathy finds out a book from which she comes to know that there lived a man named Jeremiah Ketchum in her house a long time ago, where he used to torment the Indians. Here inside the house, George gets into the sanctuary, where Jeremiah Ketchum tortured the Indians. He finds many prison cells, inside which some Indians had been captured. Kathy says that Jeremiah Ketchum slaughtered them all. He used to persecute the Indians inside the house. Now, as George goes deep inside, he discovers the spirit of a captured Indian having blue eyes. Kathy returns from the library. George hears the telephone ringing, so he uproots it and throws away. It's raining cats and dogs outside, and Kathy enters the house, calling her children out. At this time, George is in the boathouse looking for something. Kathy reaches there and tells him that they must leave the house right now. Saying this, she falls into the lake. George goes to rescue her, but he sees Kathy as demon. Therefore, instead of saving her, he turns on the propeller fan of the boat to kill Kathy. However, she gets out of the water safely and yells at George, saying, "Are you out of your mind? You tried to kill me." Chelsea takes her mother to a room where some coffins are placed having the names of each member of her family. Kathy is frightened by this sight. She gets back, but George gets in abruptly. Kathy calls out her children, asking to get out of the house as soon as possible. George also comes holding a gun in his hand. Kathy tries to get out of this ominous house, but some kind of evil force blocks her way in every way. At this time, George is completely possessed, as he doesn't have any idea about what he is doing. Kathy, taking her children, goes upstairs to save their lives and gets out through the roof. George also goes after them. He takes an axe and captures Billy. Again, George sees Billy as a demon, hence he goes to kill him, but Kathy takes him at the gunpoint and later knocks him down with the gun. But soon, George gets up and attacks Kathy with an axe, wounding her badly. But all this was his illusion. He urges Kathy to kill him, but instead of killing, Kathy knocks him unconscious. She drags his body with the help of her children and puts him into the boat, taking everyone far away from the reach of the wretched and haunted house, meaning she has successfully saved her family, which the DeFeos couldn't do. George regains his consciousness and says to Kathy, "Don't look at that house, let's get out of here." In the closing scene of the movie, we see Jody inside the house, whom some evil entity drags down, as if an evil spirit had swallowed her, and with this horrific scene, the movie comes to an end.